And we're back once again, only on It's Last Call. Last Call at the Alcohol, only on the Last Call Podcast.com. And joining me here once again, we're actually introducing on the show. He is, if you don't know him, it's your own fault. He is one of the up to date college football journals, podcasters in the business. You can check him out on Tailgate Talk SEC on the YouTube channel. He's also been guesting on SEC this morning, and he's with the Cut Agency, and he's going to break down the chaos that is LSU football coaching search, firing a lot more. I give you, well, all the way from Tennessee himself. I give you it's Will Thomas. So, Will, let's start off here with the big news. If you don't know, now you know. It's Brian Kelly is gone. He's been fired. It's now official. It's been a day, so it's not an April Fool's joke. How much, in your opinion, Will, was this just was this always going to happen? Was he always just like a bad fit for a college town that is they love their Southerners, and he basically is as good of a fit as peanut butter with sardines?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he was. I mean, obviously, hindsight helps, but like it's clear that this was never a good idea the entire time because I mean, he never embraced Louisiana at all, which is what made LSU special. Like you go back, like Ed Orgeron, do we really think he was any good of a football coach? No, but he understood exactly what LSU was, and he knew what made LSU great. He knew how to, appreciate the fans, make the fans appreciate him. That's why he fit. And the biggest sign that you can look at to see that Kelly was just a horrible idea there. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen this much former and current players, staffers, just like take a victory lap on a guy the second he is fired. Like, he is clearly not liked by most of his team and a lot of the staff. So, and you'll look on game days like he's just absolutely ripping into his assistant coaches when he knows he's on national TV. Like we saw it last week against A&M. He's screaming at Joe Sloan for the play calls. Like, Kelly, those are going through your headset too. You know what's happening. If you don't like it, then change the play. It always felt like there was a lack of accountability, just a lack of respect really that he had for everybody, and it was way more of a toxic environment than you could really see from the outside. So I mean, he wasn't a fit at all. And I think that LSU is definitely better off moving on to a different guy who hopefully fits their culture a little better.
Lost in all this is, and I'm not. I hate playing devil's advocate. He was a good coach in terms
Yes.
of results. So I mean, on paper, how tough is this? Looking at like, wait a minute here. He did get you Jaden Daniels. He did get you
Mhm.
in the top 15, top 10. Like performance wise, it's you can't argue that he did a good job. Okay, he can't beat Georgia and maybe Texas. Not many teams can. So is this a bit unfair, basically, because well, we just don't like the guy?
Yeah, it is tricky because I mean your point is obviously correct. Like he's a winner. He wins a lot of football games, and you can't guarantee that the next guy that you hire is going to go 30 and 14, whatever it is. Like have a good record in the SEC. I mean, I think it just kind of goes back to, if you got some weeds growing in the garden, like you just kind of have to mow the whole thing. And I think that that was what happened with Kelly. Like there were just cultural issues. And I mean, it was jarring for me to see what Death Valley was on Saturday. I mean, Texas A&M walking in there and making it Kyle Field East, like that was unbelievable to me. So I think that was just also a sign of like, the fans are not going to be there for you when it's hard because of the culture that you have. So I don't know if unfair is the term that I would use because I mean he did still do it to himself, but I think that you're totally correct in saying like this guy was still a winner of a football coach, and it's going to be really hard for LSU to find a guy next year who's going to replicate that degree of winning.
So let's take us into how this happened because the AD Scott Woodward said, "Hey, look, we I need you to fire the OC." Brian Kelly said, "Hey, well, I want to fire some other guys instead," and then it got into a shouting match. So, whose fault is this? Because it seems like the AD is sort of at fault. Like, wait a minute, you want to get rid of only one guy, and who else is going to call plays? What Kelly to call plays? So, how much when you look at this sneakily is like, man, Scott Woodward set him up. As they say, he set him up like a mofo.
I mean, there's definitely a part of that, right? And we'll get into Woodward later in the show too, and why I don't think he's necessarily that good at his job. But I mean, I don't know if you can really necessarily blame one person. I think the whole situation, it just wasn't working out. And you just kind of saw that continue to manifest year over year as they continue to fall just short of, going to Atlanta, going to the playoff, winning those big games against a Bama or a Georgia, or in this case, an A&M. Like, I think you just kind of saw it snowpile, and then the patience wore out from everybody. Because then Kelly got frustrated with the lack of winning. The administration got frustrated with Kelly for the lack of winning. Kelly pinned it on his assistants. Just a whole like domino effect of frustration that I think it really boiled over. But you can definitely look at both Woodward and Kelly from this past weekend and say like this probably could have been handled better. But I do still think that the end result of moving on from Kelly was the right one in the end. Did they have to do it in the middle of the season? I don't know. But I do think overall for fixing the culture, like this still had to be done. But both guys, you could definitely look in the mirror and just say like, was this really the best way that this could have been handled?
I hate saying this because I know there's going to be LSU people going, "How dare you, sir? You should be tarred and feathered." But how much they put this on Garrett Nussmeier? But he has not been what we thought he was. That when he came in, hey, he look at this is the son, of a college football coach. Hey, he's from our neck of the woods. He's not some out
Mhm.
interloper. He's from Lake Charles, Louisiana. I mean, everything you thought you wanted in an LSU quarterback, this is going to be the kid. And unfortunately, he's not been the guy. So how much do we blame this on Nussmeier just not being Jaden Daniels or Joe Burrow or other great LSU quarterbacks in the past?
Yeah, it's a really good point. That's definitely a big part of it. On another show that I'm on, me and one of my coworkers, TJ Pittenger, we did like a buy sell thing at the beginning of the year, and we both sold our fake stock on Garrett Nussmeier. It just didn't seem like it was going to work out. We both thought he was a little overhyped, and that really did play out. To his credit, though, I don't love his offensive line, and he is so beat up. His wear and tear meter is maximum the entire time. Like he is not afraid to take hits when he's in the pocket, stepping into throws, getting lit up, which to his credit is, that's brave, it's strong, but it also gets him beat up. And you saw in the beginning of the year, he was dealing with that ab injury where he just didn't have any zip on the ball. I mean, last week against A&M, he's just beat up, he's limping around. So, yeah, he was not who LSU needed him to be. And to your point, going from Jaden Daniels to an underwhelming guy in Nussmeier, that's a big shift. And it can definitely change your perspective because like realistically, I think Nussmeier is not that bad of a quarterback. But when you go from a Heisman guy at LSU to what Nussmeier was putting out there, like it wasn't good enough. And that definitely helped to snowball the negative feelings towards the program as a whole. In looking at Brian Kelly, like this is who we have at quarterback this year. Like we were supposed to go win it all this year. Look at the defense you put together. Look at how you rated the portal. Like how did you not get this done? Um, After Bryce Underwood flipped, like this is really what you have left. So that just kind of helps stockpile the frustration. I do think that Nussmeier, his lack of performance is definitely a factor in what happened.
Could they sit him? Or when I talk with Ernest Silva in the Villette podcast, I've always asked, can Sark sit Arch Manning because Arch Manning is beat up? And he's
Mhm.
responded, no, that'll get you lynched. That you can't do that in college football with a beloved quarterback. So could Brian Kelly have sat Nussmeier a couple games, or is that one of those things where if he trotted out either Michael Van Buren Jr. or Juwan Johnson, he'd probably be fired sooner because how dare you, bench Nuss?
I think it was probably doable for him. Like in that game at Ole Miss, like what's the harm in giving Van Buren some run in the game against Florida after Nussmeier threw that pick late? I guess no, he played good in that game. Actually, I'll take that back. But I do think that there's definitely some merit to giving Van Buren some run and just looking for the change of pace because you see that happen in college football a good bit. I don't necessarily love it as a strategy, but I mean, you'll see offenses use two quarterbacks who have different skill sets, and it works even better if one guy is struggling. Now, from Nussmeier's point of view, that would be a nightmare, right? Because this is his last year. And if he gets benched, if he gets pulled, what are NFL teams going to look at? They're going to look at you throwing hobbled your senior year as your tape. So for Nussmeier, I mean, there's definitely going to be pushback there from his camp. And in this era where they're paying Nussmeier and they had to give him a lot of money, he definitely has enough pull to probably fight back on that. But I do think that there was definitely some merit into giving Van Buren just a drive or two in some certain games. There's like even this last week against A&M, like you have to be able to adapt to the circumstances. And that was never something that clearly LSU was interested in doing with the performance of Nussmeier and their offense.
So now the worry you have if you're LSU, the rating will start. You know that, as soon
Hmm.
as this happened, Mike Elko, Kirby Smart, and a dozen other SEC coaches started putting out the word to like trade it as Green's people, Harlan Berry's people, Caden Durham's people, and even I'll throw out DJ Pickett. And hey, look at all
Hmm.
that chaos going there. Wouldn't you love to come to Georgia or Texas A&M? Like, if you're LSU, how much of this is a risk? Because all of a sudden now, these kids are going to be looking, going, "What the hell's going on? Why are we still playing?" And even like a Whit Weeks, who might go to the NFL, could come back. Will start looking, going, "Man, that Texas A&M, that looks pretty good. Georgia,
Hmm.
man, that looks pretty good. Hey, even SEC, Missouri, damn, that looks pretty good. Why the hell am I in LSU when it seems like the tail is wagging the dog?"
Yeah, and I that's definitely a risk, but I think that the new rule that the NCAA put in makes it way easier for coaches or for schools to move on from coaches because it used to be that the second a coach is fired, right, players had those 30 days or so to just go in the portal, just immediately walk, find their new school. They can't play that year, obviously, but they can move on. Now they have to wait until after either a normal portal window or until after LSU hires a new coach. And then that new coach gets 5 days or so to kind of be in their ear and say, like, trade us. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to utilize you. Harlem, this is how we're going to give you the ball. So it makes it way easier for teams to retain their roster with the new ruling because let's say LSU goes out and does it. Let's say they hire Lane Kiffin. Then all of a sudden it's going to be way easier for you to keep your offensive players. Now, I'm not sure what Weeks would stay and get coached by his girlfriend's dad, but just, something like that where it's way easier for teams to retain their players. It's a big rule change, and it's happening with Florida. Now the Gators can't wait till they hire a coach to keep before they start losing their players. So it's a big risk, but it is also made much easier by the rule that was put in place, I think, just a month or so ago.
All right, so let's start with the dream list for LSU. And if you're seeing this, yes, LSU's they're gonna like Penn State. They're not settling for like B+ candidates. They're going no. We're
Hmm.
we're goddamn LSU. We're going after everybody. Lane Kiffin, we're gonna make a run for him. Hey, you know what? Eli Drinkowitz, we're gonna make a run for him. Dan Lanning, screw it, we can make a run for him. It's LSU. We can get everybody. Hey, Kenny Dillingham, even if we have to, we'll maybe John Summer. Also, no, it's a B+, but let's start off here. Who, if you are LSU, give me the pie in the sky candidate. I'm not talking at Nick Saban people. He keeps telling you he's retired. Just take a hint and give me like the safe candidate where, well, if everything goes bad, break glass, we can hire this guy.
If everything goes bad, the guy that I'm looking at is Joe Brady. He's the OC for the Bills right now, but if that name's familiar to LSU fans, it's because he was on that staff in 2019 when they won the championship. He was the passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach, but he had his hands on the play calling and that whole offense way more than that would imply. And so he obviously, being at LSU, he understands LSU as a culture. He also understands what it looks like and what it takes for that program to be great. And he's been getting a lot of talk about being a college head coach this cycle. He hadn't been getting LSU talk because LSU wasn't going to fire Brian Kelly until 72 hours ago. So now all of a sudden, I do think that that's in play. He has expressed a little bit of like, I don't want to deal with the recruiting in college. I also think that if LSU wrote him a blank check, that might change his mind. And in terms of that money, like I think that Brady, he wouldn't come with the bill that a Lane Kiffin or a Lanning or a Drinkwitz would. I think you could get him for a little cheaper because he doesn't have any of that head coaching experience. So you can get a guy who's familiar to your program at a bit of a discount, but you still know that he knows what to do. He knows what greatness looks like, not just in football, but at your school. I think Brady could be a sneaky good fit for LSU.
All right, so let me put the to I hate the pee in the punch bowl, but let's talk about Joe Brady. He's not bringing Josh Allen with you guys. I'm sorry, that's not possible. He's not bringing Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and that's not possible. He's not bringing Justin Jefferson. That's not possible. So, how good is he? Like, okay, great. You do great when you have maybe the greatest show on college football ever, or when you have basically the human cyborg and Josh Allen. Like, okay, well, Will, I don't mean to disrespect Joe Brady, but I think you could do a good job if I.
Yeah.
Yeah. here's Burrow, Keyshawn Booty, Justin Jefferson. Oh, we'll throw in Jamar Chase. Figure it out. So, how much of that is a risk? Because we don't know about how good this guy is as an offensive coordinator, and he doesn't have great talent, and even as a head coach, because he's never been a head coach.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely true. It's a good argument, but I mean, sort of my counter to that is who's like what coach who we rever as one of the greats has ever done it with a bad team? Like the coaches make the team good, and I believe that the coaches are the ones who develop these players into an elite status. Now, I don't want to say that Burrow, Jefferson, and Chase they wouldn't be who they are if Brady wasn't at that school with them, but you're looking at these coaches who are developing these young guys, and I think you can kind of give them credit for making them who they are. And at LSU, you're never going to lack a baseline level of talent. So if Brady did go to LSU, I wouldn't be worried about. I mean, you're not going to find another Burrow, but I think that you're going to be able to find a great quarterback. You're going to be able to find great athletes at receiver. You're going to be able to find a good East-West running back. So I think that even if it's not these generational guys, at LSU, you're going to have that baseline level of talent that you just know is going to be at the school. To where I think you can look at a guy who's done it, who's an established play caller in Brady, and say like, look, this is what you got. It's not Burrow, it's not Josh Allen, but show us what you can do because these guys are still good ball players. So yes, to your point about not being a head coach, that is the biggest risk in my opinion. And it is kind of why I do think he'd be a bit of a discount, but that's sort of the risk reward. Like, okay, this is a few $1 million less per year, but we have no idea how this guy runs a program versus going with a guy like a Summerall or a Dillingham or a Drinkwitz. So it is definitely a big risk. But that's kind of why I have him in that echelon of you need two or three guys say no, and then you say, look, Joe, here's a check. I don't think he's the first option, but I think that he's up there because of what he has done already for the LSU program.
Let's talk about the first option. We know what it is. I know you're trying not to get in trouble with the SEC, like you know, tamper. But Will, I've already heard from sources that you have like approached the people of Lane Kiffin on behalf of LSU and said, "Look, we'll give you a boat, we'll give you a helicopter, we'll give you a blank check. Do you want swampland property in the bayou? We will give that. Like, just let us know what you want, Lane. We will give it to you. Just come to LSU. Like, I know I'm being facetious, but how much is LSU just going, Lane? Just tell us what you want so we can make it happen."
I mean, I think that's what both LSU and Florida are doing. I mean, I can't imagine being Lane Kiffin right now and just in those, 90 seconds a week that he gets to sit back and relax, just being like, I have every big school in the country just begging for me to come coach them. Like, I can't remember the last time that there was a commodity this hot on the coaching carousel that like people were sure was going to leave and go somewhere else. Like, all respect to Ole Miss, I don't see Kiffin turning down both LSU and Florida. I just don't. So, I mean, with Kiffin being that top guy, it's now an LSU versus Florida bidding war. And I think just job versus job, I think I'd give the edge to LSU as a better place for coaches. But somebody put it really well on social media. Just like once you get to the top five or so jobs in the country, you're really splitting hairs. Because think about it this way: would a coach at Florida or LSU leave for the other school in a cycle? And I think the answer is no, because I'm not sure that the edge is that big between the two schools. But it does make it way more complicated for each of them that the other is in the market for Kiffin also. So, I mean, this is going to be an absolute roller coaster trying to figure out what Lane Kiffin is thinking because, I mean, no one ever knows what he's thinking, and his social media is always full of trolls and everything. It's going to be wild to watch this pursuit of Kiffin from both those schools.
Who has the better chance of winning a national championship in terms of recruiting base, school, money? LSU or Florida? Because that's the one where it's like you sit there and it's like, well, it probably is LSU, but wait a minute, it could be Florida. Wait a minute, it's probably Florida, but it could be LSU. Like, does LSU have like a huge advantage over Florida outside of well, they're doing better? And how much, if you're LSU, do you worry if Lane Kiffin looks and goes, wait a minute here, you fired a coach who was top 15 because he couldn't beat Georgia and Alabama. No, Florida at least wants me to at least get him to like 8-9 wins. Florida sounds a little bit better right now.
Yeah, it's really close. I do think there's a certain degree, excuse me, of recency bias against Florida as a program and a school. Right, because Napier coming in and being under 500, being worse this year, it's sort of tainted the vision of what Florida is as a job. It's still a really good job. And there's a reason why they're in all these conversations. In terms of Florida versus LSU to win a championship, I think it's so close. Because if you look at like recruiting wise, Florida, in my opinion, is the best state in the country for recruiting talent, but you're competing with Florida State and Miami in state. And because of where those Florida programs have been, now all of a sudden Bama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, they all also have roots in Florida. So you have all this talent, but you've also got a bunch of people going after it. In Louisiana, there's also a good batch of talent. It's way smaller, but LSU has a death grip, so they can get all the great guys from LSU, and then they come in to Baton Rouge knowing what LSU is about, knowing the culture, probably growing up fans of LSU, and that's kind of how you get that brotherhood, that mentality in Baton Rouge. So recruiting wise, I think it's kind of a wash because Florida has more talent, but the Gators just can't possibly get it all because of the competition. And I mean, you know that both fan bases are incredible. You know that they're both going to sell that cinema just about every single night. I think it's so close that, you know, as outsiders, I'm not even sure that we're able to say which job is better because it depends on the guy. The only guy who knows which job is better for Lane Kiffin is Lane Kiffin. And I think, I mean, we'll know what he thinks in December and January, I think.
Say Lane Kiffin says no. I'm either A, staying in Ole Miss. I put those
Hmm.
odds at 50 to 1. B, I'm going to Florida. I put those odds at 5-2. Or C, I'm going to Penn State just because, well, they're offering a huge check. And once again, I don't know. Maybe I just want to. I want to I want to be the next Joe Paterno. I put those odds at probably 25 to 1. What's Plan B? Is it Drinkowitz? Is it John Sumrall? Is it Kenny Dillingham? Who do you think would be Plan B if you are whoever is going to be the AD of LSU? Probably.
I think plan B is probably Summerall because I mean Woodward knows and he's gonna hear all the noise about how like you hired this northern guy, Midwestern guy who just didn't get it. And that was the biggest problem. So then you can all of a sudden turn around and say, I've got a guy down the road who's still in my state who's turning a group of five program into a really respectable team. He's from Louisiana. He knows what he's doing. Let me just get in a guy who the fans will at least like, just personally. Because, like, I'll just go back to Florida real quick. Like, fans liked Billy Napier as a guy. The issue was that he couldn't coach, which is why he got so much grace as he did. So if you bring in a guy like Summerall, who I think the fans of Louisiana would enjoy, that takes some heat off. It gets you a little more patience. Kelly had no wiggle room. Summerall would have some wiggle room. So I think number two is John Summerall. A third guy that popped into my mind that might make no sense, but it's Lincoln Riley because I mean he's still winning games out there in USC. They are still playing football on the West Coast, and he's winning a decent bit of football games. And we know what his teams look like when they're at their best. LSU, I think, is going to look to make a splash higher. I think Summerall would kind of count as that because of how hot his name is, even though he's group of five. But if it's not Kiffin, and for whatever reason Summerall says no, maybe he goes to Auburn, something like that, if that job opens up, I think Lincoln Riley is worth monitoring as another, current head coach with Power Four experience who could maybe get a phone call and be, courted by LSU.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this because on one hand, what you're saying makes sense, and I agree with it. On the other hand, how the hell then did Nick Saban make it work? Because he is not a Southern. He is from West Virginia.
Hmm.
And you look and go, well, they loved him in Louisiana. I mean, I get it. You win, so that's all that matters. But you look at, I look at Nick Saban, who, hey, farthest thing from a Southerner. I look at Les Miles, another guy who farthest thing from a Southerner. Would Matt Campbell be the next? Would be Plan C? I mean, this is a guy who wins at Iowa State again. Friggin' Iowa State. So if he could do that in Iowa State, what could he do with the resources of LSU? And everybody I talk to who knows college football say he is one of the best coaches in terms of maximizing talent, and getting the most out of people.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up Campbell. He is a really hot name, and I think he's going to move up in terms of job caliber this year. I think that's a pretty good call. And I mean, yeah, because all you need is a certified winner. It doesn't matter how pretty they are. It doesn't matter how talked about they are on social media. You need a guy who can win football games. And Campbell definitely does that. And like you said, developing his guys, getting the most out of his talent. Like if you check all the boxes, it shouldn't matter who everyone on Twitter wants. It just shouldn't. And we'll see if Woodward's able to get that done. But then it's funny, just like back to your point about Saban being a Midwestern guy, like the fit argument really does work, generally speaking. But then you get a guy like Saban, right? Who's just like, how did he succeed in LSU and then Alabama? And just like it's clearly some guys just supersede that idea of fitting in as their culture because they're just so damn good at their job. But the fit argument I do think still applies. And for Campbell, I do think his identity it would work. I think it could work at LSU. So I do think Campbell's a good potential fit, and that was a great pull for you to bring him up because he needs to be talked about way more, really, for all these jobs.
Last one on this before we move topic. Is Marcus Freeman an option? I mean, would he take this job? Because you know that's probably like, yeah, if it's in between a Lane Kiffin and Nick Saban choice, like, no, it's probably pie in the sky like Nick Saban. He's not going to do it. At the same
Mhm.
time, it's like, well, wait a minute here. He might be better than he did. I hate to say it, he might be better than Lane Kiffin. Marcus Freeman checks all the boxes. He is this young, guy. He can handle anything. I mean, you talk about scrutiny. This guy has faced more scrutiny than any college coach.
Mhm.
Does LSU have a chance, or when they fired Brian Kelly, was that like for him? Like, no, I'm not going there. I'm going to stay at Notre Dame. I've already told Florida no. I've told Penn State hell no. I'm telling LSU no, unless there's
It
a
would
reason.
be it would be hilarious if LSU hired a second coach from Notre Dame. But I do think what you said, like he said no to Florida, he said no to Penn State. I don't think that LSU is a far and away better job than either of those schools. So I think that Freeman's staying put. I'd be surprised if he leaves at this point because immediately shooting down both Florida and Penn State, which I'd imagine were pretty legit offers. I don't think LSU is going to be able to go to him with anything that like makes him do a double take, and all of a sudden now we're in a coaching hunt. I think Freeman's a no. I think he's going to stay. He was a name that was high on my board for a bunch of schools before the reports started coming out of like him not being interested. So I do think that Freeman ends up staying put in Notre Dame this cycle.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room now. And we're talking about the college coaches. We're talking about all of this, and yet, do we trust Scott Woodward to do the job? I mean, I get it. He brought Kim Mulkey to LSU. People were dancing, and he's kept the LSU baseball around. But basketball team's a mess now. The football program is in turmoil because he and Brian Kelly couldn't get along. He's the one who signed Brian Kelly. So, do you trust him to be the guy who is gonna make the next choice? Or if you're the LSU interim president, do you go, yeah, Scott, I think it's time that you need to also step down?
Yeah, I don't know if I would trust Woodward here because the last two coaches he's hired for football were Jimbo Fisher at A&M and M and Brian Kelly at LSU, and those two guys are now running a combined $129 million to not do their jobs, which feels like that should really disqualify you from making these decisions, especially at high profile places. And you brought it up, like outside of football, he hired Kim Mulkey, he hired Jay Johnson for baseball, and when he was at A&M, he hired Buzz Williams, who's another good coach. Like he's doing a good job, not in football for whatever reason, but his last two football hires have been unmitigated disasters. So I think two strikes is probably enough to say like, look, Scott, you can be in the room, but we've got to have some other guys helping you out with this before you start promising people $100 million who might not pan out. So I would say you can't trust him to do it alone. I think he can be an advisor. You can let him be involved because he has a track record of hiring some good coaches. Just for whatever reason, football has been getting to him. So I think he can be in the room, but he can't be the only guy making the call.
Is that feasible? I mean, do you have to part ways with him then? Because I doubt he's going to be the because that's a shotgun marriage. You and I know it sounds
Yes.
great in theory, but he's going to want his guy. So
Yeah.
if you don't, let's say he says, "Oh, I want John Summerall," and the board goes, "No, we're going to get Lane Kiffin instead. I know you don't want to pay him, and you're afraid of a power, but we're going to get him instead." Like, how does that work? And is it just do you have to just pull off the band and go, "Yep, we're getting rid of the AD as well"?
I think there's a world that happens, right? Because I mean, especially with the reports of like how tense the situation was firing Kelly. Like, I mean, why is that really something that another coach would want to be around? Because other coaches are going to see those reports too and be like, is this guy going to like flip out on me if we lose a game at home? So I do think that there's a world where you could see Scott Woodward, little mutual parting of ways that you tell the people about. But if I'm in charge, if I have any pull at Baton Rouge, I do think I say, look, Scott, we got to make a change here. We're totally cleaning the house. We got to get this right next time. But we'll see what they actually do.
So let's talk about the coachings right now. As you see, if you're seeing this here, it's Mike Elko. I can confidently say Mike Elko will have a job next year. I'm pretty confident I can say that much. 90% certain that Kirby Smart will have a job in Georgia next year. Although you
Mhm.
never know. He might decide, hey, well, LSU's going to pay me $20 million a year. Oh, hey, man. I really love Georgia, but 20 million is 20 million. See you later. Like, how much are we looking at with the SEC? And all of a sudden, there is a scenario where like Sark has gone off to the pros. Lane Kiffin leaves for LSU. Eli Drinkowitz leaves for Florida. And all of a sudden, we're looking at like 9 new head coaches. So, how much is this SEC coaching cycle going to be in chaos? And who is actually safe, do you think, that will be here next year, not playing musical chairs?
Yeah, I think this coaching cycle is going to be impossible to keep up with. I mean, the potential for what could happen is is just psychotic. In terms of people who I think are safe, I think Elko is safe. I think DeBoer is safe. I think Kirby is safe. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, his name is being brought up in other jobs. I think he's going to stay because of Vanderbilt. Yeah, this is a guy who went there, who played there. He wants to build this program into something. So I think that Lee stays. Sarkisian, I do think the buzz is real because the NFL rumors, they came out as fake. Nobody can convince me that those were not leaked on purpose, whether it was to actually gauge NFL interest or just get an extension or a raise. That was on purpose. I think Heupel is staying put. And then now we're in the danger zone here. I think that Drinkwitz could be hired away. I think that Hugh Freeze is going to be fired. I think that Shane Beamer, I think he should be fired. We'll see if he is. Stoops, I think, is gone. Jeff Lebby could be fired. Brent Venables, if this falls off the rails for Oklahoma, because they're at Tennessee, at Bama, and then if they lose both those games, maybe they're broken when they play Missouri and LSU. Like this could fall off the rails for Oklahoma, then all of a sudden Venables you're getting talk about. So I don't even know how many names that is, but there could be so much turnover in this conference. If I'm saying one, two, three, four, five, six guys, I can say confidently are staying put. That means 10 jobs that I think there's a world where either the coach is fired or they move on. Like this is going to be so absurd. Just watching this all play out, hearing all the rumors, seeing where guys are at. I mean, we got to all buckle up and just hope that we survive till next season.
Could Heupel go to Florida or LSU? I mean,
Ooh,
as I said, Texas A&M probably, Elko is going to stay because they have oil money. They're not afraid to just like
I
throw it
agree
in
with
there.
that.
We
Yeah.
know that Kirby Smart, unless there is like the check that even he can't go, oh my God, you're paying me that much. He will stay in Georgia. And look, I'm like Kalen DeBoer. We're still not sure if he loses another game or if he, those Alabama fans are going to turn on him because he's not one of theirs, and
Hmm.
they still want Nick Saban. If they're trying to find a way to make it work, Nick, just come in, just stand on the sidelines. We'll get everybody else to do all the dirty work. You can just be Nick Saban. We want you back. So, like, is Josh Heupel? Could Heupel be in play for Florida or LSU?
It's interesting. I mean, he is a really good coach. He's a really good coach. I think there's a degree of he wants to be in Knoxville. I really think that he is fully bought into that. I mean, the culture has fully bought into him. The fans absolutely love him. It would be interesting to see if his name starts to get brought up because I wonder if this, a school does their due diligence and just calls his people and all of a sudden he's like, that's the number? Really? And then you kind of can get into these negotiations. That would be an absolute sledgehammer to the conference, though. Like if Josh Heupel leaves for another SEC school, I'd probably lean likely not. I think he'll end up in Tennessee still. But that's an interesting idea. It'd be very interesting to see if that starts to get brought up and there's any real buzz about Heupel getting some phone calls.
So let's talk about Shane Beamer and the rest of the hot coaches. So Shane Beamer is the one that you sort of like. What do we do? On one hand, they're
Yeah.
underperforming. And so you can look and go, yep, we should be able to move on from Shane Beamer, blah, blah, blah. He's never done well. But Lenore Sellers likes him. And Lenore Sellers is that
Mhm.
rare unicorn that comes around once every 25 years or even 50 if you're South Carolina. Oh, by the way, Virginia Tech is sniffing around. They want him to come back home. What happens with Shane Beamer? I mean, does he leave? Does he get fired? Does he go, hey, I'm taking my act to Virginia Tech instead? They want me and they're going to pay me a boatload of money. Like, if you're right now, South Carolina, what do you do? Because if you get rid of the coach, the quarterback probably goes.
Mhm. I mean, I think they have to move on. I had a I had a very large rant that I did on my own page because I think that they lost that Bama game because of total coaching malpractice, not going for two and they were scored late, and then just the way that the rest of it went down. And here's my thing with keeping Sellers, right? Like you obviously want to keep Lenore Sellers because he's a freakazoid. I mean, this guy's an absolute alien, a guy that does not come around the sport very often. I don't believe in keeping coaches for players because what's the point of keeping Beamer around for Sellers if what you're seeing right now is the marriage between them, right? Like keeping Sellers is great, but if that means that you have to keep Shane Beamer in charge, you're seeing that not really work out. So is it even worth it just to say that you still have Lenore Sellers? Maybe it's some people, but it's not working out. And with a new rule, like who knows? You bring in a good guy, you get a good hire, and maybe you can convince Sellers to stay. Even then, and then you get rid of what is, in theory, the problem, which is the coaching staff. But I have a hard time pushing that idea of keeping coaches for the sake of players because you're already looking at what that is like, and the coach and player don't work out, and it's not winning you games. So yeah, Sellers is awesome. He was actually my Heisman at the beginning of the year, so that has not panned out in the slightest. But I don't think you can justify keeping Beamer for him because you're already seeing what that looks like, and it's a losing record.
Meanwhile, Jeff Lebby, I get it. Some people want him fired. I still look and go, he took over a dumpster fire that was
Yeah.
Mississippi State. You get rid of the guy after 2 years, especially when he doubles the win total of the previous year. How if they get rid of him, which I don't think they will, because like who's going to want to take that job
Hmm.
when you're looking going, okay, the guy won double the wins that he had the previous year. We are the worst team in the SEC. Yeah, I'm hard pass, but thanks for the call.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think they should get rid of him because that program after Mike Leach, like it's the most unfair position a program's ever been put in. And I do think he's done a good job. Like being able to rally those players and have them fight is a great job. Being able to rally the fans, and we've seen great atmospheres there when they played Arizona State, when they played Tennessee, when they played Texas. Like he's done a very good job with what he's been dealt. So I agree with you. They should not move on from him. I've just seen his name pop up, so I think it's worth monitoring. Like because people are just they're getting popped left and right for effectively 2 or 3 game losing streaks that just push people over the edge. So could it happen? Maybe, but I agree with you. I don't think they should fire Jeff Lebby because of what you said about, who's going to want that job, who's a high profile enough, high, quality enough mind to turn the program around. I also just think Lebby's good there. I think he's really good there because they really should have beaten Texas. They damn near could have beaten Tennessee. Like that's two ranked wins that Mississippi State almost had. You couldn't like that's not where the program has been at for the past few years. They get blown out in both those games 2 or 3 years ago. Lebby's building something that's going to take a long time, but in Mississippi State, like why aren't you going to be patient? You have to be patient there if you're the Bulldogs. So I do think Lebby is a guy they need to retain. I think you're just seeing his name pop up because he has a losing record, and it seems like that's all that's getting coaches fired right now.
What the hell's going on in Auburn? Hugh Freeze, and I get hits his third season, so you're like, okay, well, it's he needs time, but at the same time, you look at that defense, and God, it's loaded with NFL talent. You have
Hmm.
Keldrick Falk, you have Crawford. I mean, you have all these players you're looking at going, oh my God, they are shutting down teams. I mean, literally, they've only given up 24 points, I think, twice this season. Once to Baylor, not that bad. Oh, sorry, 3 times. Baylor, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. They've held, Georgia to 20 points. They held Missouri to 23 points in overtime. They lost to Texas A&M. They held them to 16 points. How the hell is this offensive friggin' genius, having this team 1-4 in the SEC, 4-4 overall, despite the fact he probably has maybe one of the top five defenses in terms of talent in the country?
It is so backwards. I really don't understand it. Because I was decently high on Auburn this year. I thought that Jackson Arnold, fresh start, he could be good enough. And those receivers, man, Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, that's one of the best duos in the country. And Jeremiah Cobb has been really, really good, assuming that running back one role for him. It just it hasn't worked. I mean Jackson Arnold, he has a sack problem. I do think you can look at Auburn's sack issues and to a certain point look at Arnold and say, dude, throw the ball. You've got two five-star guys out wide. Just throw the ball up. So I mean, this week they're having the competition with Ashton Daniel. If Daniel takes over that job and all of a sudden they rattle off a few wins here, can Hugh Freeze say, like, look, this is the future. This is where we're at. He's had a history of being stubborn, right? I mean, Peyton Thorne played for way too long for Auburn. And I think maybe it's just been the same thing with Jackson Arnold, where his stubbornness is preventing him from making changes that make the team better. But then that begs the question, is it too late? Because they have Kentucky at home, then they go to Nashville to play Vanderbilt. They get Mercer at home, and they get Bama at home. If he's able to go 3-1, probably winning that Bama game as the bell cow of a win, maybe you see him earn himself another chance. But at a certain point, you kind of are what you are. This is where Florida was at with Napier, right? Like they closed really strong last year, earned another chance, and then you saw the exact same negatives pop up throughout this year. So I think Freeze at Auburn, it is what it is. I think you're going to keep seeing offensive struggles because you're going to see stubbornness with the depth chart with the roster. Are you constantly making sure that you're playing the best guy to put your team in the best chance to win? Freeze hasn't been doing that. So I think he is what he is. And like you said, that defense is awesome. But let's say they go out, and who's on my board for Auburn? I think Summerall's up there. I think Gruden's not a bad pick at Auburn either. If they if they do fire Freeze, and it's kind of gross. But Kane Womack from Bama just going up the state and going to Auburn, like Auburn could make a decent hire to maybe retain some of that defensive talent. Because I do think Freeze is what he is. So could he close hot? Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, you probably have to find a way to move on from him because he's shown his true colors and how he's going to coach at Auburn, and it's stubborn and not adapting to what the team really needs.
Is this finally the end of Mark Stoops? We keep thinking, well, he's not going to survive. And look, it's if ever near, we thought that in 2020. Then he comes back in 2021, goes 10-3, and like, oh, wait a minute, here he's getting a contract extension. Then 7-6, 7-6, 4-8. Now he's 2-5 and 0-5 in the SEC. Is this finally the year that the Grim Reaper of coaching hires basically goes, Mark Stoops, you are done. We can't, even Kentucky can't say, yeah, you can go 0-5 in the SEC, and we'll let it slide.
Yeah, I think this is it. In the preseason, I looked at Kentucky's team, I looked at who they had, looked at their schedule, and I didn't see 4 wins. So my instant thought was, okay, this is going to be it for Stoops. He'll have one last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they announce it before the last 2 or 3 games. Just say, he's going to retire at the end of this year. Even if he coaches somewhere else, just say he's retiring. Um, because and especially like the context of everything, like when he was supposed to go to A&M, the fans said, "Don't you dare let him come here." And then now he has gone downhill at Kentucky, and Elko's brought A&M to the top just about. Like that also takes a toll, I think. So for Stoops, I do think that he's done. And that Kentucky job is not a bad job. It's kind of a stepping stone job, in my opinion. But you can go to an SEC school, get an SEC salary, have SEC resources, even though it's not the same as like a Georgia or a Bama, but they're still pretty good. And they'll build you a statue for going 8-4. Like Kentucky's a good job for a coach who's trying to make a move into a higher level position. So I do think they could hire a decent up and comer. And if you strike, and if you hit a home run with that, all of a sudden you can be in playoff contention one year at Kentucky because you're in the SEC to go 9-3. You have a good argument for it. So I do think that Kentucky job opens, and it will be interesting to watch who they go for because you could get an up and comer, you could get a coordinator who's really good at what they do, and all of a sudden you see Kentucky rattle off a few big wins, and you're like, this is what this program can be. Not that they can be a perennial contender, but they're right there where if you get the right guy, you can win 8 or 9 games and be a legitimate threat. So I do think Kentucky is interesting to watch, and I do think it'll open up this year.
Finally, we got to talk about as you said, it's the wild card. That is Brett Venables.
Yeah.
Jim Nagy, who everybody in the scouting community loves, is now the GM at Oklahoma. Brett Venables was not his guy. And look, it started off hot. They were just humming along. We thought, hey, big wins over Michigan, Auburn, Kent State, and they're back, baby. They are back 5-0. And then it's been, well, they lost to Texas. Okay, Red River get rivalry game. It's fine. They lost to South Carolina. They beat South Carolina. Yeah, it's okay. They lose to Ole Miss, and all of a sudden now you're like, oh crap. We got Tennessee. We got it's at Tennessee, at Alabama, home versus Missouri. Then the final game against LSU. I don't want to say that Venables could be in trouble, but 7-5 is not off the table yet.
Hmm.
And if that happens, at what point does Jim Nagy start throwing his weight around, going, hey, we could get anybody we want. We could get
Hmm.
Heupel. We could get Eli Drinkowitz. We're Oklahoma, goddammit. We should not settle for average.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that, you said Oklahoma's schedule, like they're not done losing. I don't think they can find a way to go 4-0 in this stretch. But can you go 3-1? Can you win one of these road games and then take care of your home turf against a Missouri team who have Zollers at quarterback and an LSU team that we have no idea who they're going to be? Can you find a way to go 3-1, 2-2 at worst? Because if you go 8-4, if you're Venables, you're able to say our quarterback had surgery on his throwing hand in the middle of this season. Like, what do you want me to do? Because the defense is playing good. They had an iffy game against the best offense they played, which is a few question marks for me, but his identity is still there, right? Defensively is still there. They're running the ball a little bit better now. I think you are seeing this Oklahoma team evolve a little bit, but all the circumstances really are just around Mateer, and now you're into a really tough back half of your schedule when it almost feels like maybe you've already peaked as a team. That's a problem because like you said, 1-3, excuse me, is not off the table for this finish. You lose both these road games. You get beat by a Missouri team who can run the ball very well. And if that happens, are you even up for LSU? Because you go from SEC championship hopes, playoff hopes to now we're 6-5, and we have to just play this dead LSU team. Like things could really go off the rails for Oklahoma. I think if Venables is able to win two of these last games, get to 8-4, you're able to look at who he lost to and say, like, look, these were really good teams that we lost to. And you're able to say, my quarterback, who was the Heisman favorite, had his throwing hand cut open in the middle of the season, and he had to get screws put in. Like, what do you want me to do about that? He has enough circumstances, I think, where you can look at it and say, I don't think it's totally Venables' fault. What he's good at was still good. We're back here. If he goes 1-3 or 0-4, then you get conversations because then it's how this team fell apart under you. We were going to Atlanta. We were going to the playoff. Like, how could you not galvanize this team and lean on your defense, find a way to run the ball, to take pressure off of your hurt quarterback? It's really, it's going to be really interesting to see how Oklahoma pans out here. You've got to win one of these road games, in my opinion, because if you don't, it can kind of fall apart, and you come home and you got to play two teams who might be rejuvenated. Because I mean, LSU with their interim, they might come out swinging. They could get hot. So you've got to win one of these road games, in my opinion, to keep hope, which is going to be really hard because you're at a Tennessee team who they're also desperate. They can't lose a game to go to the playoffs still, and then you go to an Alabama team who I think is one of the best teams in the country. You got to find a way to win one of those your Venables to really keep pressure off your back. So it's going to be close. There'll be a lot of noise. I would probably lean Venables is good that he stays. But if it goes off the rails, I think you'll see it develop really fast, like we saw happen with Brian Kelly, where all of a sudden you're getting these like the team is meeting today. What's going on? The coaches are being called to the facility. What's going on? Like it's possible. It just needs to stay on the rails for Venables.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we have enjoyed having him on the show, and he brings the heat as he knows everything about SEC and the coaching carousel that is the SEC right now. I give you once again from the Tailgate Talk SEC podcast. I give you Will Thomas. Will, once again, before we let you go, where can fans check you out at? Where is the YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, the Rumble? Where can fans hit you up at?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at W Thomas Sports. Tailgate Talk SEC on YouTube, podcast, TikTok, all of it. A lot of coaching carousel content. Going to be keep doing all my previews and recaps, but man, I'm going to be trying my best at least to be all over this coaching carousel as crazy as it's going to be. So come hang out. I'll try and have everything for you guys. It's going to be a wild ride. Let's enjoy it together.
Will Thomas, ladies and gentlemen, once again, always on a pleasure having you on the show. We come back. We got a lot more going on here. Only on it's Last Call. Last Call with the alcohol. Only on the Last Call podcast.com.